I'm Editor-in-Chief Michael Roffman from Consequences Sound, and I'm here with Krysty Wilson-Cairns, screenwriter of 1917. The first thing I thought of going into prepping for this interview is just how the hell do you, write a script for this movie when it seems like it's just nonstop movement? So, what was the scripting process like, with Sam?
Well, the script might be the easiest part of this film, and I can tell you the script wasn't that easy.
Yeah.
Basically, to do it, you take everything you know about screenwriting. I've done it for 5 years, and you just go, meh.
Yeah.
And then you start again, and you try and work out, okay, so how can I on the page render a film that unfolds like this? Oh. No cuts in time, or even no cuts, even like throughout the sort of the description.
Yeah.
You just kind of feel a bit daunted briefly, and then you remember you're working with Sam Mendes, who's genius, and you work with Dennis Gassner and Roger Deakins, and you kind of know the A-team's going to assemble, and you think, right, well, I just click my fingers and go and write the best I can, and hopefully no one will say you're crazy.
Well, based on plotting alone, did you have to kind of sit down and go, well, is this realistic enough? Can we actually really do this?
That was the first big challenge because, take your own life, take any 90-minute consecutive window. Does it have a beginning, a middle, and end?
Yeah.
Does it have, interesting characters, a couple of action set pieces? Basically, would you spend $90 million making it into a Hollywood blockbuster?
Yeah.
And for me, the answer was no. And I was like, maybe I just live a boring life. And I asked my friends, and they were like, no. And then I realized, okay, so everyone that's going to sit in the audience for this film is going to have an instinct of reality and how far you can push it. And so one of the first things Sam and I did was kind of feel out the rubber edges of this, like how far can you push people before they go, that would never happen.
Yeah.
And that's like walking a tightrope. And then the other half of writing a one-shot movie is writing the script. And so I found I was walking a tightrope in a hurricane. But Sam was there, being like, balance, and we were fine.
And how much did the research inform the narrative,
Massively.
Oh, yeah.
So that, it's inspired by Sam's grandfather, but this isn't Sam's grandfather's story. It isn't really anyone's story. It's fabricated. Sam and I sat down and after months of research, and in some cases years for both of us, because we'd both read about this war growing up, I was fascinated by it. Sam obviously had a huge family connection to us. We both knew so much about the war, but we sat down and focused on first-hand accounts. I went to the Imperial War Museum and read the actual diaries that were on the Western Front that you could literally, hold the pages that the men wrote in, and all that. And getting that kind of connection to history is something really special, but it opened the war to us in a way that I don't think anyone had really tried to tell it that way before. And so it's not about the generals, it's not about these kind of shots from the air, it's about a worm's eye view, it's about two men going through this conflict. And in a way, it was the only way to tell this story, because I can't write a script in which you care about 6 million men dying. I can write a script in which I hope you care about a few men dying.
Totally.
And really root for them to survive.
Absolutely. And it's such an underrated war in terms of the cinematic presence in history, because World War II, it's always the go-to war.
Well, yeah. And for so many reasons.
Yeah.
One of the big ones I think is you have very understandable villains. That was a war against evil.
Yeah.
The Nazis are the worst.
Yeah.
And so there's a kind of ease to get into that in a sense. Not that it's easy to write a World War II story, but there's a sense that anyone who's sitting down there understands that concept, understands what these men are dying for. Whereas with the First World War, I think none of the soldiers knew really why they were out there. Not even the generals knew why they were out there. It was a war of politics. It was a war of kind of friction. Empire versus empire for the sake of land, nonsense, power. Any war in that sense. But it was a war of attrition. Every inch of land was bought with human blood, and it's different from the Second World War in that sense. So partly the reason it's hard to tell a war like that is the scale.
Yeah.
Is like I said before, trying to make people understand that 10 million people died in it when you factor in Russia and civilians. And the other thing that's incredibly difficult is there's very few times in the war in which there's movement.
Yeah.
You talking about a fight. Sometimes no man's land was the breadth of this rather large room. Oh,
yeah, absolutely.
It's all brown and mud and blood. It's all just, it's just trench, no man's land, trench. And then there's nowhere else to go in it. And Sam, in his research, found a very particular day in which Well, April 6, 1917, the British wake up and the Germans have disappeared.
Yeah.
They're not in their trenches.
And there's a story.
And that, well, you know, you went from fighting over 300 yards to 17 miles in some places. And then you've got an area, you've got movement, you've got a journey, you've got a landscape to travel through.
Well, that landscape and that journey, you know, you have a history of like with comic books.
Yeah.
You know, the sequencing for this film, did you lean on that expertise a little bit?
Definitely. I mean, having to tell a story visually, which is, you know, graphic novels is the absolute root of it. Obviously factored in, but I use that in any of my writing. When I'm writing for film, TV, or for graphic novels, you really think, how do I tell the story without words? Because that is filmmaking.
Yeah.
And there's certain sequences in this film that I can't give away, but it's the cross-section of, you know, set design, acting, directing, camera, writing, sound, all coming together in a holistic way to create something that allows you, the audience, to understand the inner world of the character without him saying, I feel this now.
Yeah.
Which is like what you should strive for as a filmmaker.